Hey there, my name is David Kozlowski, and you're listening to the Peru Travel Podcast, a show where we talk all about Peru travel. Between my co-host Kevin Girl and myself, we have over 6 years of working experience in the Peru travel industry. We've developed a business called Kachi Life that helps push the limits of sustainable tourism and provides help and support to those surrounding communities that otherwise don't benefit from the travel industry. We are Kachi Life, and this is the Peru Travel Podcast.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Peru Travel Podcast. I'm your host, David Kozlowski, and today I've got a really interesting episode for you. Kevin is going to be calling in, and we're going to be communicating with Julian from Scott's Cheap Flights. If you don't know what that is, it is a website that basically scours the web, finding you affordable airfare from the United States to multiple destinations around the world. It's actually a pretty manual process from everything I've read online. So I'm really excited to talk to Julian to see, one, what are the cheap flights that he's gotten? And two, how do they do it, right? Like, how are they finding these cheap flights, and how can we implement that on our trips to Peru? So if you haven't booked your flight to Peru, this is definitely going to be the podcast episode for you, because not only are you going to find a quick fix of potentially finding cheap flights, which, by the way, you book one of these flights off this company, one of them, it's a $50 annual fee. One of them, you will save all the money you just spent and then some. You're going to get that money back. Okay. So I might have said that wrong, but you're going to get that money back. All right. So here's the phone call. We've already recorded it. Let's go ahead and take a listen. And I promise you, you're going to want to hear everything this guy has to say about affordable travel and how to get there. All right, here we go. All right, Julian, you there?
Yeah. Hello.
What's going on? You're out of New York City. Is that correct?
Yeah. I just moved here a few months ago now. That's a weird thing to say, from DC, but I just switched from one major city to another. So nothing too crazy, I guess.
Are you liking it?
I am. Yeah. It's funny because I live in a quieter area in Manhattan right now. So when people are like, how are you liking New York? I'm like, oh, it's great. You know, it's quiet. There's trees. Everyone's super friendly to each other. And everyone's like, do you live in New York? Do you live in Manhattan? So yeah, but I'm loving it so far. It's,
I couldn't imagine New York City being like a quiet place, like it, or even green.
Right. And there's, I mean, so I live like half a block from Central Park, but even on my street, there are trees. And every time friends come over, they're like, oh, what are these things on your street? Like,
there was a lady that I worked with a long time ago. It was like for some commercial, and she had told me how, like, I have 2 dogs, and she had told me how her cat has never seen grass or her dog. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me, right? Like, your dog has never seen real grass. She's from Manhattan area, which I thought that was crazy. And she was she was also like totally fascinated with old farm equipment, because we live in Tennessee and there's like a bunch of old farm equipment everywhere. And she was like, you can make furniture out of this. And I was like, that's not what we do here.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, that actually reminds me. There's also a lot of dogs up here. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of dogs in Manhattan in general, but especially in the Upper West Side here. And I was reading reviews of the neighborhood before I moved in, and someone was like, the cons of the place is that there's too many dogs. And I looked over to my girlfriend and I was like, because we both, I mean, absolutely love dogs. We're like, what? How is this a con to anyone? And then it's actually funny. I was saying that with my mom right there. My mom is terrified of dogs. She goes, oh, I think I wrote that review or something. So,
that's funny.
Yeah.
There's so many great Instagram accounts too that I follow about dogs. So that's funny. I love dogs too.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
It almost reminds me of when I lived in Santa Barbara. I mean, you know, everyone had dogs and everyone lived in tiny apartments. I mean, I guess they had the beach, but yeah, everyone's living in little tiny apartments and dogs never saw.
I mean, that's true.
Any lawn or anything.
It's crazy, yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
All right, so first off, everyone that's listening, and if you don't know, Julian, if you don't know already, Julian works for Scott's Cheap Flights, which is a great website. Basically, and I'm gonna give my explanation of what it is, and Julian, feel free to back me up or change course correct. So the way that Scott Cheap Flights works is really, it was a manual process. I believe the guy that started it was Scott. And essentially what it was is he would scour the web and he would find cheap flights through a bunch of different outlets of websites, normal things that you and I would typically use to find cheap flights. And the reason that we brought Julian on is to talk about what are the tactics that they use, but at the same time talk about their website and how they do it all in source, right? So an example of this would be how we tell you how to buy your Machu Picchu tickets. But at the same time, we also say, hey, you know, if you don't want to do all this work, we can do it for you at a very, very reasonable fee. So that's kind of why we brought them on, is because we felt that they have a great service. We actually booked our very first flight to Peru on Scott Cheap Flights. And they also have this really cool thing that happens once in a while. They don't pick it. They obviously find it, but it's the mistake airfares, which are absolutely incredible airfares. So Julian, take it away, man. Tell us what Scott Cheap Flight does and how you guys got started, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, that covers definitely most of what we do, which is perfect. I like to say Scott Cheap Flight is it's not too difficult if you look at it. We basically do what people kind of don't have the time to do, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
Where, of course, someone can be sitting there for kind of their whole day checking airfares, but that's with most people, that's not possible. I mean, people have jobs and kids and all that stuff, and that's where we come in. We have a team of about 8 at the moment that is dedicated to flight searching, and we just spend 12 to 15 hours of the day. And that's our life right there, and we love doing it. And not only that, we obviously search most of the airports out of the U.S. Right now, I think we have a list of 170 around that airports that we search.
That's crazy.
So we definitely try to cover as many airports as possible, and do the hard work for you. I think that's also, that's exactly what you were saying, where, we let you know what the prices are. We notify you of what's out there because you may just not have the time to do it.
What is the average, like, just curious to interrupt. I mean, what is like the average savings that you typically see? Like, how does that, if somebody listening is like, yeah, so like they find these cheap flights, like how drastic are we talking?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say pretty drastic. We usually send, I think our average goes between 50 to 80% off.
Wow.
And which in a way that kind of skews, we've talked about this, me and some of my coworkers, of flight bias. And that usually doesn't happen in when we're searching for flights. But right now, because I'm out of New York, and I've been able to have this kind of saying of, I'm not going to go to Europe for if it's, over 400, maybe even over $375, which is obviously very lucky for me based off where I live, but it just kind of skewed my way of flight prices and stuff. But then it is always good to see. We have a lot of members write in and they're like, I'm from, what is it good? Like Twin Falls or Moline, some of these really small airports. Yeah. And they're like, we just got a deal for like $650 to Europe. And I'm like, $650 seems like a lot, but it's actually still such a great price.
Yeah. Omaha, Nebraska's not getting direct flights,
Yeah. That's a very similar. Yeah. That's a good example. I mean, in that case, we really are sending flights out probably closer to that 80% range, but definitely 50 to 80% for the majority of the deals that we send out.
What's crazy is you guys, like, I thought that there was a trick. I remember like going through your website when I first became a subscriber and going through thinking that there was like some sort of system that was invented or algorithm. And then I believe it was in the, excuse me, early morning. So what's crazy is like, when I was going through your site, I noticed how it's a manual process, right? Like there's nothing that was created, no algorithm, nothing that was just unique. It was just, like I wanted to find cheap flights and I started doing this process and that blew my mind. Like the fact that somebody is actually just genuinely going through Google and the internet to be able to figure this out.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's kind of why I like to bring up that technically anyone can do this, right?
Right.
But that's why people still sign up for our services, because we are able to spend 12 to 15 hours doing this for our members.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, the general thing of what we do is we're on Google Flights 12 to 15 hours of the day. We're on, Momondo, Skyscanner, Kayak, just the sites that everyone's using, the sites that most people know. But now we're able to get, because we're looking at, a wide variety of airports, and not just kind of the 3 or 4 home airports that most people are searching by themselves. We're able to start seeing like trends of what's there, seeing maybe like what destinations are popping up a little bit more, so we know to keep an eye on that and stuff like that, which definitely helps us along with our job too. But yeah, you're right. It is a lot of manual searching, and that's how we started, and that's still mainly how we do things now.
Yeah, and I mean, all this discount too is, correct me if I'm wrong, what was the price again? I thought it was 70 something or 80 something, but what was it?
For how much the prices are off?
No, sorry, for the total price subscription of Scott Cheap Flights.
Oh, it's the premium version is $50.
$50 a year, yeah. So super affordable, super cheap.
Yeah, we also have a free version. But yeah, premium's obviously, where the money's at. Premium is,
that's what the mistake airfares are.
Yeah, mistake airfares, Hawaii fares, Alaska fares, and your holiday and peak summer. And we like to say that, if you take one of our trips, so just say you're taking a $400 trip to Europe or something like that, which is one of the actually like regular deals that we send. Regular price, depending from where you're from, $850, $900. You're already paying for your subscription's already paid for,
right,
for 8 to 9 years, and that's just off one trip. So
yeah, I'm gonna put you on the spot because I'm curious, and you're a flight expert. I've been looking for a trip over the holidays, and I can't find anything that's reasonably priced. Is that pretty normal, pretty typical? I know it's typical, but rather like, have you ever seen anything in the past? I was like, yeah, over December 23rd through January 2nd, this is extremely cheap.
No, yeah, that's a good question. That's definitely that 1 week and peak summer are the most expensive times to fly.
Really?
And if anything, if people ask me that question, I'm like, your best bet is Central America, Mexico City, maybe.
Yeah, I saw Panama had a deal.
Yeah. But beyond that, really nothing's going to. I mean, that's why we save those peak summer and holiday deals for our premium members, just because they are, much more rare. And they do come around, but it's definitely, there's no pattern to it where it's like, oh yeah, every Christmas you can usually get good deals to, Spain or something. Although I would definitely love to see that.
Yeah. Well, cool. That's a good intro. I mean, to what you guys are doing. Let's go ahead and transition a little bit. I mean, we kind of we're talking a lot about how to get the cheap flight. Like, give me a quick story, if you don't mind, about your experience using Scott's Cheap Flight and what that looked like.
Yeah. Do you mean, how I came to Scott Cheap Flights, or flights that I've taken through Scott Cheap Flights?
Legit flights. Like, let's talk about your savings, what you've done.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I've taken about 4 to 5 trips, but 3 really stand out to me. My first trip that I ever took with Scott's was actually a mistake share. And it was from DC, where I'm originally from, to Stockholm for $130.
Good.
No, $150. Yeah, $150. And I like putting that one out because it's very similar to how Scott started Scott Cheap Flights. I think he took a $110 or $130 flight from New York to Milan.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of Scott Cheap Flights. Yeah.
That's crazy.
So,
yeah.
So that was, I mean, a good introduction into Scotchy flights for that $150.
And I'm going to interrupt because, like, I'm assuming that was a mistake airfare, correct? What?
Yeah, exactly.
How does this? Give me the you because I don't have any idea. I've tried to look into this. Like, how does this work? Like, do they have to honor it? And what is a mistake airfare? Like, how does this even happen?
Yeah, I mean, mistake airfares at the base of it is just, if someone's manually entering the prices or something messes up on the airline side and you see instead of $1,250 you're seeing $125.
Jeez.
Can they cancel the flight or
they can they definitely can, and a lot have, so that's why in our emails we send a little blurb. It's like, hey, this is a mistake fare, so definitely wait a week or two after booking to make sure that it's not canceled before booking, any tours or living situations. But we do have those mistake fares where the airline, they honor it. The best one I can think of recently was, I believe it was a mainly West Coast business class mistake fare in the 600s. To many places in Southeast and Eastern Asia, and that one was a huge hit because the airlines even came out and tweeted like, "Hey, we're aware of this mistake fare. We obviously fixed it, but we will honor it."
Wow.
And that's cool. That's kind of the difference there. Yeah, is some airlines are okay with taking that reputation hit of, hey, we set these fares, they were mistake fares, and we're going to cancel everyone's. And some are like, you know what? Yeah, our mistake, that's on us. But we had people book it, and we're not going to take that away from them.
I wonder what person's sitting in the room and had made that mistake and what they're feeling when that happens. I would be panicking, like I'm going to lose my job or something. Yeah,
and you're right, and we've thought about that before, where we're capitalizing on someone's mistake. Someone's probably sitting there like, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. I hope I don't get fired. And we're over here like, yes, perfect. This is what we're looking for.
That's funny.
But yeah.
So when you take your your $150 or whatever it was flight, your mistake flight. So do you when you travel, do you keep the savings and then, stay in the hostels, or do you go baller status, get in the penthouse suites, and what do you do?
Yeah, great question. I think I do a mix of that. Sure. I'm definitely not a huge saver, even though I should be. But I do stay, if I'm traveling, especially like Europe or honestly a lot of places out of the US, I stay in hostels. One reason for that though is I've recently kind of gotten into the hostel life and have seen like how amazing and how much of like a community hostels can be. So that's actually one of the main reasons I started doing that. Also, yeah, you do save money. So I think that's a win-win over there. And then, but for me, yeah, I think with that thinking of, I spent $150 on this flight, I can eat at this super good restaurant. I can, do this amazing tour or go see like these 5 museums or something based off that. So that definitely is in the back of my mind as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a crazy, when people think of hostels, I know I did this for a really long time until we went to Peru for the first time, but I had this envision that it was just like a crazy college party place, but we ended up getting like a private room. It was private. We could store our stuff there, lock the door. I mean, it wasn't this open room where everyone's just laying their clothes out everywhere, like, hey, welcome to college again. It was a lot different.
Yeah. And I mean, even with like those kind of the shared rooms, it's always so interesting to see the different types of travelers there. And you really are able to meet everyone, which is super cool. Like even in Stockholm, I think on my like 3rd day there, I met 2 people. One was from Turkey and I think one was from Egypt. And we actually took that day, like the day we met, and just walked around Stockholm and explored and stuff.
That's cool.
So that really surprised me actually. And that's one thing that I wish the U.S. was a little better at was the hostel traveler life. There's not too many hostels over here, so
sure. Kev, weren't you just doing the PCH, and you said that you stayed at only hostels with your lady?
Yeah, we drove up up to PCH, went to San Francisco, down back to Hollywood, and that's pretty much all we did was hostels.
That's awesome.
It wasn't as cheap as a hostel in Peru or anything. We were still paying pretty good, but it's definitely still a lot cheaper than
the hotel. Wasn't one of them on the beach too?
Yeah. So there was one that was actually at a lighthouse right on the water, but we didn't get to stay there just because all the fires were going on in California at the time, and they had the power out, so we had to scramble and find something else.
Yeah, it's been a bummer.
But that would have been really cool.
Yeah. Julian, I'm going to challenge you here, and I don't know if you've got any of this information, but do you know a little bit about flying into Lima or what that looks like, or if you had any tips or tricks?
Lima, unfortunately, is not one that comes around too often.
Mm-hmm.
But when it does, we've seen it. I think we've seen it in like the 400s. Especially from kind of your East Coast places. Obviously a little lower if you're looking, Miami, maybe even Texas. But beyond that, it's just...
What does that look like for you? Like you talk about like Miami, right? I hear a lot of people doing this. I'm curious how many people do it. You said, okay, it's $400 for Miami. You're in New York City. It's $1,500 from New York City. Do you take a flight from New York City to Miami?
Yeah, that's definitely something that I would do. I know a lot of people who have done that, and that's something that at Scott's we advertise. We have a great blog writer, and she's written stuff about how, if there's an amazing fare somewhere, usually domestic travel is not too bad, and that's actually one of my I would say one of the ways that I fly cheap is not being tied down to your home airport. And if there's a $150 flight from DC to Stockholm, but you live in Texas, that flight's going to cost you what, 200?
Sure.
250, maybe 300 at the most, but add that with the 150, that's still cheaper than almost everything else you're going to get.
So you're opening it up to everything just to be able to say, hey, in the off chance that there's a cheap flight somewhere, and if you were going to Peru and you saw something from Texas to Lima, Houston or something like that, you would basically figure out a way to get a cheap flight down to Houston.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you stay the night?
Domestic travel, I probably would. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, especially if it's a city that I haven't been to or haven't explored much. I might even take fly down a day or two before. And make that into kind of a 2-city trip rather than a 1-city trip, and especially because most of these airports that you can fly, especially to Lima, your Texas cities, your Florida cities, they're usually bigger, they're more fun. So yeah, definitely fly down there a day or two before. I think I just went to, where did I fly? Orlando, or Tampa. I just flew to Tampa a few weeks ago. And I think my ticket was $180 round trip. So getting a $180 ticket and then a $350 ticket to Lima. That's a great deal in itself right there.
Yeah,
so,
that's really good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like, just on the idea and the aspect of traveling cheap, a lot of my friends have always asked me, you're constantly going all over the world. And it's really not true in terms of they assume that I'm spending a ton of money, and the fact is I'm not. And we've got a lot of tips that we've created ourselves between Kevin and I, because he's a big Googler. We're I don't know if you're familiar with we have so many sites, but Wirecutter, we're looking at the best product at the cheapest price. We use Scott Cheap Flights, we use the Points Guy. We're constantly trying to find the best stuff for the cheapest price. And I think one of the ways that we do a lot of our traveling truly is through utilizing both tools. I think you kind of go when you implement Scott Cheap Flights with something like credit card points, it becomes extremely affordable to do a lot of things, especially if you don't make a ton of money. And we anytime we go to Peru, it's typically a reward flight of some sort. And I know Kevin the other day was talking. I mean, Kevin, I don't know if you've done it, but you haven't spent any of your points, and you found flights from Nashville to Frankfurt. You've had this card, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, for like 4 years, and you're like, I could literally fly my girlfriend and I to Frankfurt, Germany, first class or business class or whatever, and still have points left over.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely spent my points, but I just keep accumulating so many more.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was actually from New York to Germany, and like, you know, get one of those first class sleeper for free just because of all the points I got, you know.
It's crazy. That's my dream someday, is to be in a sleeper. Like, I would love that.
Oh yeah, that'd be amazing.
Right? Wake up, you feel rejuvenated.
Yeah.
You're not like jet lagged, you know. You're just like, oh, this is fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that though, because or more about the points is, I have a lot of friends who fall under that trap. Not trap, because trap is a negative connotation, but where the flight prices are so cheap that at some point they're like, well, we'll just pay cash for it, or, you know, like, we'll use our credit card and buy it.
Yep.
And then you're not using your points, and then you're also, but with that purchase, you're getting more points. So my friends are like, I have so many points and I'm just not able to use them.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, your life is so hard. Your life is so tough.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
We saw like a huge deal go on for Lima not too long ago for $400 from Houston, Texas. And we're actually waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully something comes back up, because we're heading down in June. And I know, like, it's just bizarre to me how affordable things can get random times. Like, it is mind blowing. June is the busiest time in Peru, you know, and flights are dropping like crazy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I think we sent a Lima deal probably like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was a pretty widespread deal throughout, honestly, throughout the US.
Yeah.
I just pulled it up now, you know, Boston 450 to Lima.
It's crazy.
Miami 391. I mean, you love seeing those 300s to Lima. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I mean, Julian, is there anything else that you can think of that you got to say, or you want to say about Scott Cheap Flights and kind of what you guys are doing?
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at my notes here.
You're good.
Yeah, the other main thing, I mean, the other big idea of Scott's is we like flipping travel on its head in a way. So obviously Scott himself, he started Scott Cheap Flights to make travel more accessible, make travel, you know, cheap. Scott Cheap Flights, he can't really go against that. And then so one of the main ideologies we share is most people, when they look for flights, you know, you think of the dates that you want. And then after that, you think of the place that you want to go. And then that's when you start looking at places. And while that, you know, some people have to do that based off when they have break, when they have maybe a student, maybe that's, you know, you're looking in summer break, winter break. But for most people, the cheapest way to get prices is if you flip that. So instead of date, place, price, you're looking at price, place, and date, where you're looking at the cheapest prices. You don't have a limit on, you know, oh, I want to go here, I have to go here. Instead, you make like, I have a top 5 places I want to go, or something. And then after that, then you look at the dates of where you want to go. And with that, you're not restricting yourself to the availability and the dates, and you're not restricting yourself to a certain airport or two, and that's truly how you get the best of the best prices.
Gotcha.
I mean, that Stockholm deal, Stockholm wasn't on my list. I mean, not that I have anything against Stockholm, but I just, you know, I had a lot of those bigger places in my head: New Zealand, Australia, parts of Asia. But that deal came through, and I was like, this deal is just too hard to pass up. So I took it, and I mean, not only, you know, do you get to travel, but you're able to experience a lot of new places, a lot of new cultures that you just didn't expect to. And I think that's another thing that members say that they love about Scott Cheap Flights is they're not, I mean, members aren't able to take every deal that we give them. That's crazy, actually. But one thing that they are able to do is kind of window shop, and that's something that people really love doing. Is, oh, I've never heard of this place, or oh, I've never thought about going here, but with this price, maybe I will. What is there? And then, you know, they kind of do their own research, and then see what, you know, tours, what activities are able to. Hopefully, if for Lima, they find your site and use that. And then from there, they're able to just get the best prices on deals.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a good way to put it, right? From just to recap, there's sounded like some crackling on at one point, but basically the case in point is like, look on Scotch Cheap Flights, find your flight ahead of time, then basically ask for your vacation time, go ahead and then book all your tours and your hotels, etc., and go from there. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, I love the tool. I think you guys should check it out. Go look at it. It's really affordable. Like you said, you book one flight and you definitely paid for it yourself. And yeah, Julian, thanks so much for hopping on, just kind of going over the cheap tactics. You know, we love getting those insider tips, if you will, on how to just travel cheaply and obviously relate to Peru. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, no worries.
Or thanks for having me.
Yeah. Happy to, brother. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Oh, by the way, I got to throw this out there. Though we were supposed to have Scotch Cheap Flights on about 3 weeks ago, and I got to thank you, Julian, because the last time I had to cancel because I got Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever, which sounds like a cartoon thing, but it's like a legit tick-borne disease. And I was on my deathbed, and I texted him, was like, I can't do the podcast. And he was like, oh, no worries, we'll do it a later day. So thanks so much for bearing with me and getting back on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Actually, yeah, before we hop off, I do want to point out one thing. I was going through the website, or your guys' website, and one of the things I really liked was it may seem like a small thing, but you guys include the what's not included on this trip. Yeah. And you also give the prices of that, or for most of the trips and for most of the things that are not included. And I thought that was super, super, super useful, because I've booked, so many of these tours or activities that you do. And then while you're on it, you're like, oh, this small group is going kayaking down this river. And I didn't know that was a thing, but you had to book that in advance, and you don't know how much that costs. So even just having that knowledge there of knowing what else you could do and how much it costs, I feel like is a super cool thing that you guys have on there.
Thanks.
Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. We, Kevin and I have worked really, really hard making sure that, people, first of all, that was 90% Kevin's idea right there. We just transitioned to an a la carte system, and building the a la carte system in itself was very difficult. We originally wanted to build the a la carte system at the beginning, but we were like, we just didn't know how to build the system actually through the site. And creating it was kind of like an example got brought to us. When I buy a taco, I don't want to have to pay for the cheese. I don't, I want to pay for what I'm putting on the taco. And it's like, well, we can do that, that's easy. So we'll do that. And then hopefully at the same time, like, people will see that it can be very, very affordable, but at the same time, if you want to have a great experience, it just costs a little bit extra. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, a lot of it too is just, as time goes on and you learn about your business, everyone has their different, idiosyncrasies of what they want to do on their trip. And, we just want to make sure that it was, what they want to do.
You can't drop bombs like that and not explain what that word means. Idiosyncrasies. What do you got? Give me the definition.
Everyone has a unique aspect of the trip that they want to, that they want to partake in. Some people may not want to do whitewater rafting, but then they want to do, the zip line on the tour. So just to make it accessible to everyone.
Yeah. No, I dig it. I love everything that everyone's doing here so far. Very bright minds on the podcast today. I'm including myself in that. I'm very humble.
Of course, definitely.
Joking. Cool. Well, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it. If you go to Peru, let us know. If you want to go to Peru, let us know. Anyone on your team is going, we'll definitely do the best we can to hook some stuff up for you and show you a really good time. When I say that, the place that we always throw out there, the place we always throw out there is Ryan Community. Just to give people that local Quechua look. We love sending people up there. So it's when I say hook it up, it's usually just a really, really sweet, unique experience and really immerse you in the culture, just to see what it's really like to be
That's
a local
amazing.
Quechua. So yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much for hopping on, and thanks so much everyone for listening. Again, I'm David Kozlowski with Julian from Scotch Sheep Flights and Kevin Groh. Talk to you soon.